When you play the Game of Thrones,
Subscribe and like.
you die. There is no middle ground.
I think Dany's clash with Aegon will paint her in a villainous light. Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of things that are interesting about Aegon and Daenerys. I think Daenerys will already be painted in a bad light, and so that any action that she does, especially if she takes down Aegon, in my opinion, will be, public perception will go against her. And so I think that's a really fascinating idea, because you look at Daenerys, and I've talked about this so much. You think about the way that she went about doing things in Essos, right? Where he was somebody that after book one, he was somebody that had people around her that loved her because of her actions, right? Leading the Dothraki, freeing the Unsullied, freeing slaves, all these things. He was somebody that is well loved and respected, and all those things in Essos. Well, I shouldn't say well loved, right? The slavers don't love her, stuff like that. But she has a pretty good support base, right? When she comes to Westeros, that's going to be completely different. She's going to have almost no support, right? There's not going to be a lot of support for Daenerys in terms of the public. The public is going to view Daenerys as a foreign invader. She's going to get the absolute opposite of what Aegon gets. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. One, as much as the dragons show legitimacy for the Targaryens, people do not like the dragons, right? The dragons are basically a show that at any point the Targaryens could come and burn down your villages, burn down your homes, burn down your castles, and you are really powerless to do anything about that, right? So if you didn't have a dragon, you wanted the dragons to disappear, right? There's a reason that, for instance, perfect example, Rhaena Targaryen, the Queen of the West in Fire and Blood, not the Rhaena during the dance, but the Rhaena, the older sister of Jaehaerys. She was put onto this idea, right? She would go to castle, and people would try to basically court her to get her maybe her dragon, or trying to get dragon eggs, trying to buy those things. And eventually she would feel like she needed to leave. She was kind of being pushed out of each of one of these castles. That's how people would view the dragons. So there's going to be a bit of that, right? People don't like the dragons. They remember the horror stories of Harrenhal, and maybe Maegor's reign or war on the faith, or they remember the dance, or these stories about the dragons. Then you're going to put that with, okay, she's coming over with this unsullied army. A lot of people in Westeros would view it kind of as like a sellsword army. The Dothraki, this, again, the perfect way to describe it is the way Viserys thinks about the Dothraki in book one. That's not just because Viserys is, who he is. That's the sentimentality of all of Westeros. Really. So you have these foreign armies coming over. You have Daenerys coming over with the dragons. And all of the while, Aegon, by the time Daenerys even gets to Westeros, will likely already be on the throne, or at least about to be. So you're going to be coming over here going, okay, well, Aegon's already retaken the throne. So, okay, if Daenerys is coming over, that means Daenerys is either going to marry Aegon, or she's going to, support his claim, whatever she's going to do. Nobody would expect Daenerys to go against Aegon. And again, a lot of the public is not going to maybe believe something like, oh, Aegon's a Blackfire, he's not a true Targaryen, because Aegon will probably already be well loved by the public. The public is not going to accept the word of Daenerys, this, again, foreign invader who's trying to legitimize her claim. Then you put it with the prejudice that people have against women ruling, and you can already see, you can connect these dots where Aegon will be viewed really well, and Daenerys will not be. It's kind of almost a similar manner. I wouldn't say as distinctively, because Rhaenyra had a lot of people that supported her in Westeros, but it's kind of the people that maybe go against Rhaenyra. It would be their argument. Like that's what people may argue against Daenerys and her claim. And so that's the tough part of it, is Daenerys, in her mind, based on information she's probably going to get from Quaithe, possibly Illyrio and Pentos, whoever else, she's going to come to probably the conclusion that he's not actually a Targaryen. And so she's going to have all this information that she knows in her heart that he is basically taking their family off the throne. Even though the Blackfires are Targaryens, still the Blackfires, they are big enemies of the Targaryens. You have that aspect of it. And then you look at young Griff, who is kind of your model prince, your model king. It's kind of, he plays the part, right? Varys is going to be manipulating the public to go with him. I think the faith will like Aegon more than, for instance, the Lannister regime at the moment. Daenerys is going to be coming over at the worst possible time because people don't want another war. They don't want more of the War of the Five Kings. They want some peace and stability to go back to be able to farm, to prepare for the winter, prepare for all these different things. And so I think it's a really, interesting discussion point that was brought up about the two characters of Illyrio and Daenerys. So, or not Illyrio, I should say Young Griff and Daenerys. But yeah, really good discussion points. Why it's one of my favorite plots going forward. Daenerys and Aegon will probably be similar to Dany versus Jon in the show. I think they definitely will take elements of that, right? I think there definitely could be that, where Daenerys and Aegon, maybe Daenerys is trying to make a good relationship with Aegon. I personally don't think we'll get to see a love thing between Aegon and Daenerys, because I think that young Griff has already shown signs of having a temper, of being somebody that can be quite arrogant. We see this specifically in when Tyrion and young Griff are playing Savas. That kind of comes out. And you see that a young kid, right? I don't care who you are. It is very difficult to possess traits of power not corrupting you at how young of an age young Griff is, or Aegon is. And you got to think about everything that's going to be happening. In the span of just like maybe a couple months, young Griff will go to being the king of Westeros, possibly marrying Arianne or Marjorie, Sansa, whoever you think, all those things, and having absolute power that quickly. I personally think that's going to go to his head a bit. I think that's going to really also change that relationship between Daenerys and young Griff, whereas young Griff, like Tyrion said before, was kind of going to Daenerys as a beggar, more or less, kind of like Quentyn is. Really, Quentyn is what I would say. Quentyn is a worse version of young Griff, because at least young Griff was going to have like an actual physical army he was bringing to Daenerys in the Golden Company. But yeah, so with that being said, young Griff is going to look at Daenerys like, where were you? I was the one avenging our family, all these things, because he's not going to know he's a Blackfire or anything like that. He's the one that brought the Targaryens back to the throne, not Daenerys. Daenerys is disrupting the peace that he's already set forward. So, again, I really love the Daenerys and Aegon conversation. The Greens crowned Aegon II to give him legitimacy. That's true. I think the same will be kind of true of young Griff, though, right? Like, I think something similar, for instance, is I think the sword Blackfire, Aegon the First sword, probably will be given to young Griff upon maybe his coronation around that time. I think he will be kinged for all of those reasons. I think Illyrio and Varys very much will push for that as well.